Welcome to another episode of Digital Dexterity. I'm Wes McChristian, our Kentico practice lead here at Americaneagle.com. Before we get into today's episode, I want to give just a quick shout out to some of the unsung heroes of the productions we've been doing here. Brian and Julia are in the room. I just want to say thank you for all of your support in putting these together, all the editing, all the content. Just really, really super helpful. Want to make sure we call that out here as we progress. But I'm joined again today by Sean Wright. Sean, you want to say a quick hello and introduction?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Wright. I am lead product evangelist with Kentico.
And in today's episodes, we're hoping to have a product-related conversation with Sean here. We're seeing a lot of cool things come out of the Xperience by Kentico tech stack, and I think there's a lot of exciting conversations to be had about some of the stuff that you guys are doing to sort of push the product forward. So, Sean, maybe let's start with, like, you guys have built these great sort of pillars and direction and vision for the product itself. Would you mind starting off with just sort of like unpack the underlying vision for the Xperience by Kentico direction and trajectory?
Sure. Yeah. The product has historical foundations in content management going back 20 years. But with Xperience by Kentico, this new product that we are offering to customers, we have reimagined some of those core content management capabilities with a new vision and strategy, and incorporating digital marketing from the ground up. And one of the things that's a little different about Xperience by Kentico with that vision is the enablement of multi-channel experiences for customers, crafted and curated by marketers using our product. In the past, we enabled marketers to manage multiple sites with the previous products. Today, we enable them to manage multiple channels, some of which could be websites.
Sure.
Could also be emails, and also headless APIs to expose content, structured content that they've crafted and created to channels that are maybe outside their control, or using a variety of technologies, whatever a team would like to use. We're kind of allowing marketers with this product to craft that content once and deliver it anywhere.
Great. Yeah, and being hands-on with the product the way that I am, what that means in a practical sense is, right, not just the traditional page tree and the page editing experience, which of course is still there.
Yeah.
But also now this idea of the Content Hub, right, which is a new feature inside of the Xperience by Kentico product, right? This idea that we're going to model structured content, make that content available then not just inside of the page experience, but in any of the other channel-based experiences that you're describing. So it's this direction that I think you guys are positioning, this idea of hybrid headless, right? And I suspect that has greatly influenced the product strategy. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. In previous versions of our product, we had a lot of the same capabilities that Xperience by Kentico has, but they were thought of very differently. So the previous products were very website focused, like everything hung off the website. And that worked fine if you wanted to just deliver content through a website, and then everything else is kind of an afterthought. Now, website is just one option among several. And you mentioned hybrid headless. That's a key part of this product, is that we allow a traditional approach of building a website visually by a marketer, selecting content and design customizations for landing pages, but we also allow them to use headless as a delivery mechanism for content and experiences for their customers. The key is it's an option. It's not required. So we have a lot of the headless capabilities, but we're kind of a hybrid because we're not a headless CMS. We are a digital experience platform with headless capabilities.
Which I think is an amazing distinction, because a lot of other headless first products on the market are not going to have that web first mentality that you're describing. They're going to have the same multi-channel sort of approach, but my experience with headless products is they're sort of not necessarily built for the web as the primary mode of consumption for content and building experience. And certainly I think it tends to gravitate that way, but the products themselves aren't necessarily architected with that in mind.
Yeah. I think there's a common way of looking at established players in a marketplace and newcomers. And the question is always, can the established player become what the newcomer is faster than the newcomer can become what the established player is? And a lot of the headless content management systems started out with this ideal of just headless and go take your content and use it wherever you want, and then quickly realized that websites are still by far the primary channel for content delivery. Yes, there are other channels, and the needs of those channels have grown over time, and having the flexibility to deliver them is very important, but websites are still the primary channel for a majority of organizations. And so the question is, can those headless CMSs become a CMS that delivers content headlessly and has a great website experience faster than more established players can, that have a very strong website content delivery experience, also offer headless capabilities?
It's early stages, but one project comes to mind where the client wants to manage their content inside of the web experience, but they're also building an app, right? And we're sending this content down into that channel, which Xperience by Kentico is like just a really unique and well-suited product to be able to accomplish a use case just like that. But headless aside, what are some of the other sort of pillars of vision that factor into the Xperience by Kentico direction? We've seen some materials, delivering value, strength and strengths. Can you talk to us a little bit more about some of those things as well?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, multi-channel experience is a core part of the product. We view these channels, you can think of the product as being a core of content management and customer data surrounded by a shell of channels, of experiences for those customers. And that mindset permeates the entire product. Modern technology and making sure that we have a strong foundation with modern technology is also core and key to the product. We rebuilt our content management capabilities from the ground up with modern technology to make sure that marketing teams that adopt our product are in the best position they can be today and in the future. And we have a goal and dedication to stay up to date with that technology and make it something that our customers can adopt with ease.
And do you have some like tangible examples of some of this stuff? Like, are you talking about like .NET 8, right? Their recent release, and is that effectively what you're describing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our product is built on ASP.NET Core and React. Those are the two core technologies. There's lots of other pieces in there, but those are the two core technologies that someone that's familiar with that technology would understand. And when we started building the product, it was based on .NET 6 and React 18, and .NET 8 was just released a couple weeks ago, and we had compatibility with .NET 8 within a couple days of its release. So our team had already been testing and working with it and validating, yep, everything's going to work fine. Customers can start using it and gaining the benefits that come along with it, like free 10% performance improvement of their application. Absolutely free, right? All they need to do is update one number in the project and everything's faster. And we wanted to make sure that customers could adopt that as soon as possible. And I think, that gap between release and us validating and approving that .NET 8 was going to be supported was just a couple days. And so that's, I think, a great example of our dedication to making sure that we are guiding customers to stay up to date with technology, enabling them to stay up to date with technology, and not putting them in a position where a couple of years down the road, there's some legacy thing in our product that they are now forced to deal with. We don't want to put them in that situation.
That's great. That's great. As a product, it's been on the market, a year and a half now, right? Summer, we saw the sort of the advent or the genesis summer of last year, summer of 2022.
Yep.
And so I'm interested. Like, I'm not always sure what's the chicken and what's the egg in some of like the roadmap decisions, right? Like, 2023 is a great year, a great example, because this year has sort of been the year of AI, right? It's what we've seen, this just amazing emerging technology that we've seen forms of previously, but is now kind of come into the mainstream. I don't know, management trends of just the way we operate, right? So I'm interested, like, in the age of AI, in the age of security, in the age of compliance. I think you did a great job sort of unpacking the headless and the channel focus. Like, how have some of these other things impacted or shaped the trajectory of Xperience by Kentico in the last year and a half?
Yeah, so we have a public roadmap that anyone can view at roadmap.kentico.com. And that roadmap details both things at a kind of a high strategic level and also at a very low granular level, depending on the time frame. That roadmap, if you were to look at it today, is going to show that we are focusing on some core content management capabilities and some nice to have digital marketing features.
Okay.
And that's really the focus of the product right now. You mentioned AI. We have AI in our product in preview. I think the way that we're approaching AI is a great strategic approach. There are lots of products out there, basically every product out there, that is saying we have AI. What does that mean? Well, you'd have to go to each one of those products to figure out what that means with
Right.
AI, right? It's kind of like a rubber stamp you put on your product, and now it has, AI as seen on TV. There it is. We got it. Okay. So you can check that box when you're shopping around. The way we're approaching it is we want to make sure that the AI capabilities in the product truly enable our customers, which are digital marketers. We do not want to spread AI all over the product and have it interfere with what marketers are trying to accomplish. We don't want it to add confusion to how the product functions. We don't want it to introduce concerns about copyright or security or data sovereignty or anything like that.
Right.
We want to take a thoughtful approach to AI and make sure it is a true enablement. So today we have it in preview in the product. So most people would not see it. You kind of have to talk to us, and then we'll light it up for you. And then we want to have a conversation about it and see, is it actually helping you? Is the direction that we're taking something that's positive, or is it getting in your way? And we want to make sure that the direction that we take from today into the future always improves the experience for our customers.
Yeah, one of the, I think, like, the really sort of neat tactical ways you've used it in previous versions too is, creating alt text for images, which is just, as a marketer, as a business user, which is who we're trying to solve for, it's just such a tedious task.
Mm-hmm.
It's a necessary task, right? Because we want to put SEO and accessibility and modern web best practices first. But, when I've got a boatload of images, it's sometimes a difficult thing to go in and label each one and using kind of the classic cliche of work smarter, not harder, right? That, like, we can leverage AI to do that for us, to create some of those things. So it's neat that we're sort of pushing that a little bit forward into the preview mode that you're describing, and in different size and shape with Xperience by Kentico.
Yeah, we want to make sure that customers that use AI capabilities in the product have confidence that it's working how they expect. The last thing we want is for someone to say, oh, there's this AI thing and it does all this for me, and then they check back in 5 months and it turns out that what they end up with is not what they expected. And now they don't have confidence in how that AI functionality works, and so they don't use it. So we want to make sure as we approach this that it's something that customers understand how it's working, how it's impacting their workflows, and feel confident about adopting it, just like any other capability in the product. We only introduce it in a way that helps the users feel confident about using it.
Right. That's great. So, okay. So, I guess we've sort of spent the first few minutes here kind of looking kind of retrospective, right? It's like, what's our vision? What's the road? What's shaped the roadmap? Let's maybe look forward and talk a little bit about what's coming. Like, I know in just a couple weeks, there's some pretty major enhancements coming to the headless API and some of the way that content can be delivered to some of the channels that we've been describing. But I don't know, tell us what you're most excited to see and enter the product here in the short term.
Yeah, sure. So, like you mentioned, we will be releasing production-ready headless channels. So it's not just the API, although that's key to content being delivered out of the application over an API. API is key for that side, but we also want marketers to be able to manage that content and that experience from their side. So the headless channel is kind of the full picture of API plus marketer administration and management. That will be coming out in a couple weeks now. Along with that update, we will be releasing Cascade Publishing, which is an important feature when you think about content modeling as relationships between multiple structured content items. So this is a concrete example. If I have a blog post that I've authored in my application and I want to publish it, that blog post refers to an author content item,
Sure.
and a hero image content item, and maybe some taxonomy content, and maybe related articles or something like that.
Yeah, the idea that like one piece of content is made up of multiple pieces of other content.
Yep,
Right.
and each piece of content is its own thing, but there are relationships
Yep.
between them. And the application makes those relationships visible, but that relationship doesn't stop at just the first level of relationship.
Sure.
So like blog post to author. That author also has its own related content
Right.
items. Okay. So
And is its own entity.
it's its own entity.
Right. We
Yep.
have a headshot and a name and a description, just like the article has a headline, a byline, and a body.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So that author could be related to a company or organization content item, and that organization could be related to an organization, building image content item. Okay. So this thing
nested,
can go forever.
nested doll of content. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our product allows you to create these graphs of relationships as deep and as complex as you want. But for a marketer that goes to publish that blog post, they are going to have an expectation that when they publish it, any of those content relationships that are being displayed on that blog post page also are visible and usable. But if those other items are not published and they're newly created, they're not published, they won't be visible on the website or through headless API or through an email when an email is being sent out.
Right.
So we want to make sure that marketers are aware, hey, there's a subset of your content relationship graph that has unpublished items in it. And so we make this visible to them. There's a kind of a flyout tray. It shows all through the entire graph, all the items that have potentially unpublished versions, letting them know if these are unpublished, you might not get the results you expect. It might be intentional.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And a marketer can say, yeah, no problem. But if they want to make sure all those items are published, they can click one button and it will publish the entire graph of content relationships, ensuring that all the edits they've made to these various content items that are related are all live and visible through whatever channel that content's being delivered through.
Which is neat. And, some of the, often unsolicited feedback is some of the best feedback. I have heard from multiple people how polished and intuitive the UI is, in the latest version of the product, which I just think is a neat commentary on the evolution. And what you're describing is, it's a complex action, right? It's this nuanced action that has a number of different components inside of the content management system that are, in this scenario, tied to a single action. And so for the UI and the user experience for the content admin, for the marketer, I'm lucky if I can even spell GraphQL, right? Like I need it spelled out in front of me. Is the UI intuitive? And I can press a button and make sure that this cascade of content is all published. And I think you guys have really hit the mark, on making that a really intuitive experience for the business user, the marketer, the non-technical administrator for the website, which is a feat.
Yeah, I think that's a great compliment to the development, UX, and product teams that work tirelessly to make sure that the workflow for the marketer using the product will be great. I think this also relates to that idea that we want to release capabilities into the product that give the marketer confidence. So if you go to publish an item, you have confidence that you know what's going to happen
Yeah.
because
The
we're
outcome is
surfacing
clear.
that information to you.
You
Yeah.
got it. Exactly. That's great. What other emerging tech do you see maybe influencing the coming roadmap features and planning?
So AI is definitely going to be something that we continue to explore and invest in, as I think all
Yeah.
technology companies are. I think the headless channels, when we release them, it'll be interesting to see exactly how they're adopted. We know there's a use case for them because the headless content management market is pretty active.
Right.
I think there's a little bit of hype in that, but there are real world use cases. And we know that our customers that are very focused on websites still have a need for headless API. I think the technology trends we see will be related to that because that opens the door for lots of different options. Um, Staying up to date with the technologies that we depend on will also be interesting, and also our application exists in a world where there's lots of different ways to deliver a product and run that product. And that could be a pure SaaS solution where a company says, look, you have like a UI you can visit on our website,
Yep.
and we have some APIs that you have access to, but you have no control over anything else. Basically, what we expose is what you can use, and that's it.
Yep.
And then on the other side is a completely custom built, tailored application, line of business app built by a development team that has every single knob and dial that an organization needs. Now, there's pros and cons of both ends of that spectrum, and those products are also delivered in different ways. So the custom built application, that's going to be delivered by that development team into some environment, maybe an internal data center, maybe into public cloud. That SaaS application is delivered by its internal product team in a way that the customer doesn't really know that like updates are happening.
Sure.
Except if there are breaking changes in some of those
Right.
APIs, which inevitably happens.
Unless
Right?
something breaks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're kind of in the middle of that where we have the ability to deploy out to internal data center, public cloud. Also, we have a vendor managed SaaS environment where we aid teams in getting updates to their application deployed out to an environment. But we also allow that customization of the product. So we aren't limiting the knobs and dials that a team or a marketing team has access to tailor their solution to their business's needs, their organization, the channels that they want to distribute content and experiences across. And we also give guardrails with the product itself to make sure that it's not something that you have to fully custom build and define your own restrictions to. We kind of help teams go along with best practices. And I think that there's a lot to explore in this spectrum of how products are delivered and where we fit into it over the next 5 years or so.
Yeah.
We see things like Docker and Kubernetes clusters, things that marketers really don't want to know anything about, but are very important for developers. And we also see things like webhooks and events and composability with other products, things that marketers are interested in because it extends the capabilities they have with something they've purchased,
Right.
that impact developers. And all these different things, they play a part with each other. And I'm very interested to see how this develops and how we take advantage of the different options that are out there, selecting the right ones for the customers and not forcing them into solutions that come with some caveats that they aren't looking for given their interest in our product.
Yeah. I mean, one of the sort of philosophies or mantras that you guys have held as the product has evolved and grown is like choosing simplicity over complexity. And you're sort of touching on that a little bit, but I think it's really understated how important that is. And one conversation with a client recently comes to mind. They're a current Kentico license holder. Their goal was, hey, let's do some marketing. Let's create this cool campaign, this dedicated initiative to push and it's a financial institution. So some of the products from the credit union in this case. And if we wanted to do that in the old version, right, what we used to know as sites, not channels today, that would have been a new license purchase, a whole new microsite spun up and implemented. And, do we have to navigate some of the infrastructure components that you're referencing or not? And so they're sort of naturally gravitating towards, well, maybe it's easier to solve this outside of Kentico. And that then fragments the way that they manage and fragments their technology and all of the other things that you're talking about, right? Is like, as an entity, as a marketing organization that just trying to do some simple microsite for this initiative to push our products, this philosophy behind channels and simplicity over complexity now allows us to actually just do that straight away without having to worry about some of the, I think the spirit of my question was like, what is the emerging tech? But this then no longer fragments some of those considerations.
Yeah. So we want to deliver capabilities without required complexity. Complex systems are complex because they model complex requirements within an organization, and there's no escaping that. So if you think about the system that manages New York Stock Exchange, that system is complex, and there's no getting around it. It's modeling complex system of businesses and organizations and requirements. The question is, does a solution for a digital marketing team need to be complex?
Yeah.
Is it complex from the start? Or is it complex when they want to opt into that complexity? And for us, we deliver the capabilities without requiring that complexity. So for example, our technology stack and the components that go into deploying our solution is very simple. We keep it very simple, very intentionally. And a customer can start creating content, modeling content without saying, okay, now I got to think about headless. Now I have to think about emails. Now I have to think about website. No, you can start doing those core things without introducing the complexity of those different channels. And of course, they're going to want to adopt some of them, but they only have to adopt the ones they want, only the channels they need. And when it comes to licensing, you license the channels that you want, the channels that you need, and you aren't forced into using or being required to know about even those other channels if that's something that isn't appropriate for your solution at this given point in time.
Yeah.
And as soon as you want to adopt it, well, it's all in a single product. It's all there in front of you. You just have to turn it on, and now you get to adopt the capabilities with whatever added complexity comes along with that new channel that you're using.
And I've heard you say this before, and I think it's just so like prescient almost, but like not just a single product, but a single product authored and intentionally developed by the same team, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a really cool direction to head to, especially in this like era of composability. That simplicity is really, really powerful with that vision that gets inherently baked into the product.
Yeah, there's something about the fully composable systems that requires complexity from day one. What that gives you is an immense amount of flexibility. But a lot of teams can't handle the amount of complexity that comes day one with that fully composable system.
Or they underestimate.
Or they underestimate how much complexity is there.
Yeah, right.
And then they aren't able to take advantage of all that flexibility because they're constantly running into the complexity.
Right.
We are a single product from a single vendor. Everything is in that product. So we reduce the complexity while still enabling the flexibility that our customer base is looking for.
Yeah, that's cool. So, we've got a couple minutes left here. You said something a few minutes back just about best practices. So, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about like the partner and implementation side here, like for partners, vendors, prospects that may be doing it themselves. Like what advice do you have for adoption of Xperience by Kentico? What's a good place to start?
Think about how the application is designed. I'm not talking about the code or anything like that, but think about how our product is designed. It's a core of content management and customer data surrounded by a shell of channels. If you look at your solution channel first, So let's say you're like, I want a website, and I'm just going to build out that website, and it's going to be a bunch of rich text, and that's the only thing I'm thinking about today.
Right.
You will inevitably paint yourself into a little bit of a corner if in the future you want to adopt other channels, or you want to reuse that content or deliver experiences to customers in other ways.
Yeah.
But if you start thinking about the solution that you are building or going to be working with from the perspective of content and customer data first, then you can adopt those channels as needed. And maybe your first channel is a website. Fantastic. But you still have that core, which allows you to move into those other channels with the least amount of friction. So when it comes to kind of like scoping out and starting on a project using our product, 10 years ago, people would say, okay, what's on the homepage? And then you design the homepage, and then you'd say, what's on the product page? And then you design the product page. And there's this very from the most visually connecting piece, and people respond a lot to that, like that visual layer.
Yes.
That's the thing that they can think about. They'd start there and then work backwards. And I think today it benefits teams to start maybe a bit more abstract, and not think about the presentation and the visual so much, because every channel that you're going to be delivering to has a different way of presenting things. So if you start website first, then you might be designing your content in a way that isn't very ergonomic for emails, or isn't very ergonomic over a headless API.
Sure.
But if you start content first and think about modeling the content according to how your organization communicates internally about information and how you think about your customers, you're going to be in a better place as you mature and are able to take advantage of more aspects of the product, and you'll be able to grow, and you'll run into far fewer hurdles down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice, because, and Mike Wills at Connections in Nashville, I think, did an excellent session on
it was
just
fantastic.
like the idea of content modeling, the philosophy behind it, because it empowers so much, not just the experience on the web, but experience in other channels, and then even our governance structure. And, because we can have the model support not just our own internal governance policies and management policies, but also the experience that we want our users to have with that particular content, which is, it just, I think you're right. It feels like a really natural place to start when we're building for best practices. Yeah. And performant channels, right? And not just performant in like page speed and but performant in that they drive conversions.
What are the goals?
And they help our business.
Yep. And I think it can be kind of awkward for teams that are not familiar with this mindset and this approach to adopt it. Fortunately, Kentico has a large partner network, Americaneagle.com being, at the forefront of that network, that can provide guidance to customers on how to do this mindset shift. And it doesn't require a lot of extra work. It's really a different way about thinking of how you're reaching customers, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Sean, this has been excellent. Really appreciate you joining us on the session here. And to all our listeners, thanks so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.